It is really cute.
Wait till the dog starts asking questions.
It's coming. It's coming.
You again? Haven't you had enough?
She's such a tramp. Are we good? Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Patrick Millikin from the Poison Pen Bookstore, and it's a real treat to have Jordan Harper with us this evening. He's going to be talking about his really incredible new book. And joining us to do interviewing tag team duty is my friend Robert Anglin of the Arizona Republic. So please help me give them a warm welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. You bet. And so we'll probably just riff back and forth a little bit. I know you all probably have some questions too. But I guess the place I wanted to start is there's this great quote from Michael Connelly that's the book, everybody knows, is the book everybody's been waiting for. And it's an interesting quote, because it's like, there's a group of writers right now, Ivy Pacoda, Naomi Hirahara, Gary Phillips, just a bunch of them that are kind of like recreating the LA crime novel or updating it for today. Such a good one, too. But this book by Jordan Harper, wow, yeah, you just get a sense of this is modern day LA, in all of its sleazy glory, and we'll talk about James Ellroy a bit too, and also the classic noir period. When I read this book, I thought, well, this is James M. Cain in a way. A lot of the same things that Cain was writing about. The 14-year-old, 15-year-old girl from the Midwest who arrives at Hollywood and Vine to make her fortune, in the underbelly and. Yeah, so that was my my swell introduction. No, it's just a wonderful book. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you came to write it?
Sure, and thank you. I appreciate that introduction. I agree that there are so many people doing interesting LA noir right now. To everybody you named, I would throw in Steph Chaw as somebody who writes excellent LA noir. Adam Frost is a new writer. Has a book called The Damned Lovely out right now, which is has a lot of throwback elements of the amateur detective, making his way through the world. But it's a totally updated Los Angeles, the way Los Angeles is right now. Really recommend that book also. But I came upon like this idea, and I think maybe where I'm coming at this from a different angle than all those people. I'm also a TV writer, and I'd gotten the opportunity of my life, which was I got a chance to try and turn James Ellroy's LA Confidential into a TV show. And I took it out and I pitched it and I sold it to CBS, which is a network, which wasn't anybody's idea of where to do James Ellroy, but we did our best. We had Michael Dinner, who was a great TV director, directed a lot of Justified and things like that. And we had Walton Goggins in the Jack Vincennes role, a great actor, Walton Goggins, a lot of other really great people. And unfortunately, it didn't go to series. CBS didn't pick us up. And so I had all of this like James Ellroy energy that I really wanted to do something with, this idea of telling a big, epic LA crime story. And, but one of the problems we had selling the project was that Ellroy writes in the 50s. And a lot of people, particularly in Hollywood, feel like that was a long time ago. And the truth is, the 50s were a long time ago at this point. It's not 20 years ago. In fact, I've come to think that maybe the way to adapt LA Confidential today would be to set it in the 80s, because we're as far away from the 80s now as Ellroy was from the 50s when he wrote it, and you really wouldn't have to change anything. And part of that realization was the realization that LA is, in a way, a sort of an eternal city, that the things that we write about, like you pointed out with James Cain or, Chandler or any of those guys, is once kind of the money got in and the real estate became so expensive because we're right up against the ocean and it's beautiful and there's Hollywood money and all of those things, that LA kind of locked into this like eternal struggle about power and sleaze and beauty and traffic and all of those things. And I thought, nobody is trying to do that right now. Nobody's trying to tell that kind of LA story. And I've never had this feeling before in my life as a writer. I've never felt like I'd found this like total field of empty snow that I could run and that had no footprints in it. And that's how it felt writing this book. And so Yeah, that's how it came to me is just with all of this pent up LA Confidential energy that I wanted to do something with.
Just tell me though, in your version of LA Confidential, do we get the Disney angle on it?
Yeah, actually, we filmed some footage of Ed Exley's father with blueprints of the Dream of Dreamland. The dialogue about it got cut out of the pilot we finished, but I mean, we could still see Dream of Dreamland. We were going to do that was part of my pitch for doing LA Confidential was, I think the movie is one of the great film adaptations of all time, but partially it's a great adaptation because of what they leave out. Because there's so much in that book you could never fit it all into a movie, and that was part of my pitch was we're going to tell the LA Confidential story that nobody who hasn't read the book knows, and so it's going to feel fresh to most of the audience. So yeah, we were going to do all of it. We are going to do Dream of Dreamland.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
I want to see it now.
There is a cut. I keep hoping. I'm not smart. It's not ethics that's stopping me from leaking it to the internet. I don't know how to.
Right.
So I'm hoping somebody with as few ethics as I have and more technical knowledge gets a hold of it and gets it out there because I'd love for people to see it.
How many of you here in the audience tonight have read James Elroy? Okay, so we have a pretty hip crowd here tonight. But one of the things that strikes me about Elroy, and I don't know if you guys agree or disagree, is that in some of the books, he keeps peeling off a layer of depravity, and just when you think there isn't another layer, like, oh my God, Walt Disney. But tell us a little bit about, and sorry, Steve, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just going to say, have you read this forthcoming Elroy biography?
No, I didn't know there was one.
Yeah, it's not very good, but he mentions you in there and your dealings with Elroy when you were trying to get the LA Confidential going, and the tone in there seems to say that you and Elroy weren't exactly on the same page when you met.
I didn't meet him until after the pilot shot, so I don't know. I would have to read the thing. No, I think he was, when I met him, he said, so it's going to be on CBS. I won't do an Elroy impression, but he's like, or I will, so it's going to be on CBS. And I'm like, yeah, it is. And he says, so you can't say. And then he did a string of words. Oh, is that in the biography? No? Okay, well, that's the only time I've met him, but he just let off this string of words you cannot say on CBS. And I had to tell him, you are correct, James Elroy. None of those words. This was when the show had been filmed, but we didn't know if it was going to go to series or not. He was very kind to me. No, I didn't have any problems with him at all. Very kind. And I have a voicemail he left me afterwards that I've never erased and never will. Like, I love that.
Yeah, he's been here a couple times.
Yeah.
Always entertaining.
Something else.
I mean, I told him, help me get the job, but my dog is literally named Elroy. So, yeah, I'm a fan.
Yeah, the other thing is that one of the questions I was going to ask you is why, out of all the people you could mention, you would mention Walton Goggins, but now you explain because he was going to be in the.
Well, that's actually it's funny that you say what he's referring to is in the first chapter. You go to the Chateau Marmont, which is this famous hotel in Hollywood, and one of the celebrities mentioned in that is Walton Goggins, but that's not why I mentioned it. Actually, I checked myself into the Chateau Marmont with my partner, Megan, to write that first chapter. And every celebrity mentioned in this book is a celebrity I saw in the place I saw them. So I actually ran into Walton at the Chateau Marmont. He was the only celebrity I knew. The rest of them mentioned are just people, which made it very weird because we had gone intentionally to gawk and see what celebrities were there, and to have somebody I knew turn around and smile at me was like the paintings on the wall turning and looking at you. But also I actually haven't done it yet. I keep meaning to send him a copy because he doesn't know that he's in this.
Did you work on Justified?
I didn't work on Justified. The director of the pilot, Michael Denner, directed a lot of Justified, including the pilot. So he was the one who brought Walton in to the TV show.
Great actor.
Yeah, great.
So you don't leave much ground unscathed in this book, man. Do you really like Hollywood?
No. I love Los Angeles. I love Los Angeles. The Hollywood, and the thing I always say about Hollywood is it's exactly what everybody says it is. And the good parts of the parts everybody says is good. And the bad parts are exactly what people think they are. From, executives who want to meddle with art because of the commerce involved to all the things that are in this book. I've never experienced a lot of the darker things that are in this book, but I have been around really bad actors who are protected. And you see how it works and how how many layers of protection go around bad people because of how much money they're bringing in to the system. And that's, so I took those feelings and then just kind of took them to that next level of things that I had heard about, but fortunately never had to deal with in my professional life.
There's one book that I don't know if it's probably little known, but you may know it, by Matthew Stokoe, called High Life.
I don't know that.
Oh wow! It, you know, was going to say yours is the darkest. He might be a little bit even darker, which is quite an accomplishment. You got to say. Let's talk about Mae Pruitt. Let's get into the book here and talk about she's what's called a black bag publicist. What does that mean?
Well, a black bag publicist is the technical term for them is a crisis manager, and the shorthand that Mae uses in the book is she doesn't get the good news out, she keeps the bad news in. She's the person who kills stories, manipulates the press, does all those things that we know happen behind the scenes. And it was just a way, she is somebody who is behind the veil. She's on the other side of the mirror, and she is, these are real people. I created the term black bag publicist. That's my own invention. I hope it catches on.
They're going to start to use it, aren't they?
Well, I didn't intend this at the time, but then I was reading the new editions of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy that came out a few years ago, and Le Carre wrote an introduction to all those books, and in that one he says that he invented the term mole as it's used in espionage, the idea of a spy inside another spy service is a mole. And Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, he just invented that, and now spies all over the world, that is the term they use as mole. So I'm like, oh, come on. If you can change the English language, that's got to be one of the coolest things
That is pretty cool.
that a writer can do. So that's who Mae is. And, I wanted to write about a character who was, because I'd never really seen that. I'd seen publicists and stories before, but I'd never seen somebody who was that involved in like really killing stories and being on that edge of it.
Well, and also, it's almost like the classic Faustian bargain, to what extent, we'll sell our souls for a little bit, maybe, but there is a line somewhere. And again, I don't want to give any spoilers, but she definitely flirts with that line.
Well, I like to, in all of my fiction, I like to write about people who do bad things and know they're doing bad things and have a sense of guilt and do them anyway, which is how I feel and how I think a lot of people feel in their day-to-day life. But when I actually I did sit down with a crisis manager and who had worked with a very bad man whose name we all know, and their attitude was very different than the one that Mae has. It was they didn't care. They said things to me that were so on the nose and uncomfortable that I couldn't put them in the book because it didn't sound real coming out of a character's mouth. That's how life is. Like fiction, you actually have to be more realistic sometimes than life is. There's one line in the book that did come directly out of their mouth, which is, I'm not saying the truth isn't important, it just doesn't matter. And yeah, when somebody says that to you, and you're just taking notes, and they said things that were so out of the blue weird that I won't repeat them, but it was like, oh, okay, so you feel no guilt about what you do, and they don't. And
well, those kind of sentiments are not unfamiliar to us in these last 4 or 5 years.
Yes.
I mean,
but I think Mae's character is something that I feel, and I feel a lot of people feel, that what I wanted to say with her is, I think there's a lot of, now we all feel so trapped by the world that we go, well, as long as we feel bad about the world, we don't really have to do anything, right? Because we feel bad, and that means we're good people even though we're doing bad things. And that was the attitude that I really wanted to examine. It's the attitude that I have about a lot of stuff, recycling, or just like, oh, I eat meat and I know the slaughterhouses are awful, but like I feel bad about it, so I'm going to go ahead and have that steak. And I think that's an attitude we all have about a lot of things, and I just wanted to heighten that and put it into these like very concrete, actionable terms, which is what I always try and do with fiction.
Yeah, there's a great quote in here that says, well, there's a bunch of great quotes. One of them is, "At the root of every fortune is a crime," which,
Yeah.
That's a great line. But this is about Mae. Mae knows that in the industry, if a man falls off a cliff, maybe he can climb back up. People will even stick their hands over the side and yank him to safety. But once a woman falls, she's fallen for good.
That's just it's a fact of probably in a lot of places, certainly a fact in Hollywood. And if you want to see like a way to chart that out, it's with women directors. Like male directors are allowed to have flops and they're allowed to make other movies, but there are a lot of great female directors where you go, what happened to them? And then you see, oh, they had one flop and then were never allowed to make a movie again. And or it takes them years. They're put in what's called director's jail. That's the term for a director who's lost money on a film, and can't. Men just tend to get a lot more bites at the apple than women do, and so I think, like I said, I work as a TV writer. My partner Megan also works as a TV writer, and a lot of May and what she goes through came from my observations of the differences between my experiences in Hollywood, which weren't always great, and then Megan's experiences and how they were worse, and trying to capture that as part of what goes on.
And May is part of what you called the beast,
Yeah.
which is this bigger, she's one part of a whole package that operates together.
Yeah, so the Beast the Beast is the collection of its crisis management firms, law firms, and private security firms that all kind of act as the middlemen of evil. And they're all real. All these things are things that exist in the real world. And that was a real way for me into the novel, because I realized I didn't really want to write about the perpetrators of this kind of evil. I didn't want to be in their heads. And I didn't really feel like I'm the person to be in the victims' heads. There's a lot of other people who write those books. Winnie M. Lee has a novel called Complicit, which is a very great on-the-ground story of what goes on in Hollywood. It's the realistic version of Everybody Knows.
What's it called?
Complicit.
You know it?
Yeah, it came out this year, and I knew that that's what Winnie writes about, and she is qualified to write about that. I didn't want to do that. I'm more interested again in these people who are doing bad, but they're doing it for other people, and so it's really not that bad. It's just for a paycheck, like those kind of people. And again, I think those are the people Elroy, like in that American tabloid era, are writing about. So I was kind of borrowing from him a little, but that's the people who interest me, are the people who are actually, the logistics of things gets glossed over so often, and that's what I'm fascinated with, are the logistics of all of these terrible acts.
It's like, wow, there is a job description for that.
Yeah.
You make a good point, though, at points along the way in this book, which is really fast. But you have May talk about, it's more than just the paycheck. It's the rush. It's the being the inside.
She's the bullet.
She is the bullet, which is a great recurring line in the book. And I mean, she's in this for a lot more than just the money.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, this is just me projecting maybe. I don't think many people do these kind of jobs just for the money. If that's what you really want to do and you have no morals, there's a lot of ways to make money. But, and again, a lot of this is me finding entertaining ways of talking about my experiences in Hollywood, which, I mean, I've had a lot of very strange, interesting things happen to me because I've worked in Hollywood, and it is a rush to be behind the scenes. It's a rush to be someplace where you're on a tech scout van with all these actors, and they're telling stories. It's all very seductive, and that was what I wanted to sell in May's life at the beginning of the book, is that even though she's right off the bat doing bad things for bad people, that she's doing it at the Chateau Marmont, which really is a romantic setting, and it really is. I put her in the kind of the cabins at the back, which is a real place, and it's so quiet there, and it's right on the Sunset Strip, and you really can't figure out why it's quiet, because no place else on the Strip is, and I don't know if they've just built the acoustics of it well or what, but there's definitely a reason why people want to do these things, and I wanted to sell that and hopefully make the audience think, well, I would probably want to do that too, at least for a while. And so I really wanted to explore every angle of it.
Well, if this is your version of what you experience in Hollywood, remind me never to piss you off.
That's what, did you feel like you were pushing the envelope a little bit with the Black Rock, the ex-special operators who are basically murderers?
No, I mean,
Working for the Beast.
Working for the Beast. I mean, I'm fascinated with the privatization of armies that is going on just internationally right now, the privatization of police forces. I mean, again,
Prisons.
What's that? Prisons, the privatization of prisons. And again, the idea of what we call violence and what we don't call violence, and how those lines get blurred. And so, no, I think, when you really dig into, especially what goes on internationally, the assassination of the president of Haiti, which I start to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but where it was all private mercenaries, and a lot of them not knowing what they were being called in to do, and thought they were going to, rescue the president of Haiti, and then he's assassinated, and they realized they were on an assassination mission. Those are the kind of things that sounds like you're on 3 Days of the Condor, right? But that's all completely, that's what happened. That's a fact. And so, I'm fascinated with that place that reporting has a hard time getting to because it's all this unverified stuff. And I think that's a way that fiction can tell the truth better than reporting can in a lot of cases.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's some strata where, and actually Matthew Stokoe talks about this in The High Life, that there is some strata where snuff films occur, you know, and just unspeakable stuff happens.
Yeah, my next book, which I'm writing right now, is going to be much darker than this one. So,
Oh God. Nice.
you know, you got to chase the rumors. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to, you know, there's a lot of stuff in this book that are based on like newspaper articles or facts where people know who I'm talking about, and there's other ones that are based on rumors where people inside Hollywood know who I'm talking about. And then there are things that I don't know if they're true or not, but boy, I want to put them in a book. And
Right.
and so I don't, you know, I'm not a reporter. I'm telling a story here, and I'm telling a pulpy story. And so I'm chasing the really big rumors right now.
Well, and
Better be careful.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
I fictionalize.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, we'll see. Big talk for me, right?
Yeah,
Jeffrey
and
Epstein looks sort of like a specter
Over the book.
over the book.
Yeah, the next one's going to have a lot more of that. So, yeah.
quite a bit, yeah. I mean, LA, by definition, is kind of like an apocalyptic landscape, you know, with the weather and the mudslides and earthquakes and all this.
Locusts.
The day of the locust,
Mhm.
exactly. And then, you know, today, you know, you have the series of fires,
Yeah.
arsons that are being started in homeless encampments throughout the city.
Yeah, that's how we start the book. That is one that's based on a true story. There was a guy bombing homeless camps who turned out not to be a city councilman's son, but a powerful politician's son. So that was totally taken from the truth. There's a great writer who died earlier, I guess late last year, named Mike Davis, who wrote
Yeah, City of Quartz.
yeah, who wrote City of Quartz, which is one of the great books about Los Angeles. And in another one of his books, whose title escapes me, he talks about how important the weather is to Los Angeles and how it's a place that almost defines itself by its catastrophes. It marks time through catastrophes. We don't have seasons the way other places have seasons. You guys are probably the same, right? But like there we have earthquakes and fires and murders and all these things you say, you know, before the riots, after OJ, after the big earthquake. You know, we actually mark our time through catastrophes, which is partially Mike Davis' thought and partially thoughts from my new book. But like, yeah, there is something always a little apocalyptic about California, I think, especially now. And
And it has this occult kind of underbelly.
there's always Manson and
Yeah.
you know, the
Jimmy Sample McPherson. And
the Caltech, the rocket labs in the 50s, Crowley and all those people. It's a fun place.
Fun stuff.
Well, I love how you populated the book with these little gems, the bloody glove, the Wonderland throw. That I bet half the people who read it won't know what you're talking about. Old Johnny Holmes,
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff. But it's just littered throughout your book, and they're great little anecdotes for anyone who knows L.A.
Thank you. Yeah, I tried to. Yeah, the Wonderland murders are very heavily referenced. Yeah, there's the Manson in there. There's the Bloody Glove. There's a few other things that are small like that I tried to work in. The problem I'm having now is I emptied my entire Los Angeles cup into this book, and I'm trying to write another one. And
Well, you got Parker too, as the guy with the needles, and
yeah, naming him Parker, and yeah, there's a lot of little things for people. There's a lot of little scandals in there that like people who've been there will remember. A lot of the stuff that May deals with tend to be stories that I fictionalize but are 100% true. Even like things like early in the book, they're trying to squash a story about a wreck on a TV set where a writer got his leg amputated, and that was a true story. Like almost all of the things that I dealt with in that respect were true stories that I fictionalize. And yeah, the guy with the needles is based on a guy in West Hollywood. There's a lot. I don't want to say too much. I know you haven't all read it, but yeah.
no, I mean, there's a lot of things I want to ask you about. I also want to take you back to your previous work, because I was a huge fan of She Rides Shotgun.
Thank you.
I mean, I counted it as one of the top crime books I'd read in years, and the writing was about, well, Elroy, of course. There were throws. I saw Don Winslow in there, others, but then
Charles Portis.
a little Charles,
yeah.
Portis for sure. But then we didn't see anything from you, at least in the States, for a long time. And I kept waiting, where is this guy? Where is this guy? And then I found that, And so I wanted to ask you about that She Rides Shotgun, this kind of desert noir, which was in that book as well, and where you go from there to here, how you make that leap.
Yeah, well, the book he's referencing here is called it's called The Last King of California. This is a novel I had that came out last year only in the UK. I couldn't find a US publisher for it. I still think it's good. That makes it sound like a really bad book, but I think it's good. It's darker and more literary than my other work, and I'm very proud of it. But that was the book that it's also changed a lot. It took me a long time to write. I came out of She Rides Shotgun, and I made the mistake of trying to write another book too quickly. And then I got involved in like the LA Confidential pilot, and it took me a long time. I wrote Last King of California. I put it in a drawer. I wrote Everybody Knows first draft, and then I finished that, and then I finished Everybody Knows. But I'm originally from the Ozarks in Missouri, and so I grew up with like rednecks and white trash, and that was what a lot of that's a lot of what my early fiction was about. And when I moved to California, my first fiction, like She Rides Shotgun, was me basically taking characters I knew from the Ozarks and that kind of stubborn hill people, white trash, and then just finding the part of California that was like that, which is the Inland Empire outside of LA, particularly Fontana, also known as Fontucky. And I wrote about them for She Rides Shotgun and Last King of California. But I've lived in Hollywood or Los Angeles, and I've worked in television now for 14 years. And I just found that I don't think after this, I felt like I'd said everything I could. There's a lot of people writing this kind of grit lit. Everybody, my good friend S.A. Cosby, Daniel Woodrell, anybody you want to point to, most of them are still in those places, and I'm not. And so I felt like if I was going to be honest about what I wrote, I needed to go to the world that I've been living in for 14 years, which is why I made this pivot towards writing, about LA and Hollywood and the industry and that kind of level of crime.
Are May and Chris going to become a franchise for you?
No, I don't think I'll ever write a series that has reoccurring protagonists, because I kind of like taking a character and taking them to the place, putting them through the most important era of their life, and then I kind of like don't know what to do with them, because I was like, they've made their choice. I've given them the great choice of their life, and they've made it. So the follow-up, which is currently the working title, is A New Kind of Violence, is going to be in the same world. A lot of the same villains. The Blackguard people are going to be in it. There's going to be reoccurring characters, and May is going to appear in it, but I think. But it's a new set of protagonists, because I just feel like that is what's interesting to me. There are people who do it. Michael Connelly can do 37 Bosch books, and I admire that, but I'm just not that kind of writer at all.
I bet you get some pushback from the publishers on that.
You would think, but I think everybody recognizes that, there are different kinds of writers, and you can't make yourself like, I got very lucky. I got to interview Connelly fairly recently because somebody else had called in sick at a Q&A, and they needed somebody in a quick replacement. So I went and talked to him, and his attitude towards writing is so, I don't know how to say it other than like cool. Because writing, it's not that writing isn't fun for me, but it's not as easy for me as it is for Michael Connelly, where I just wanted him. I was like, have you ever had writer's block? Because I just really needed him to have writer's block, And he's like, well, at the beginning of the pandemic, because I like to write in real time. I like to write about the world the way it is. I didn't really know how to handle the pandemic. So like for 6 weeks, I didn't write. And then I started writing again. I was like, that's so rude. Like, it's so rude.
Old reporter.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's the daily reporters are the people who can churn out writing at a clip that I'm just incapable of doing.
And he's so consistently good.
Yeah.
I once asked Robert Parker about that in these Spencer books, and he treated it just like what I do during the day. Turn it on, turn it off, go about my business.
Like I love Stephen King's book on writing. I think it's a great book on writing. But the one problem I have with it, if I had a bone to pick with Stephen King, it's that the way he talks about writer's block or writing, to me, is like a 7-foot tall guy going, you just take the basketball and you put it in the basket. Like, it's not hard. It's like, oh, your brain is built differently than most people's, and I'm not built that way. And again, like, I don't want to act like writing is like the hardest thing you could do. It's not. It's, you sit in a chair and your fingers do that. But I don't produce at the level that those guys do. I just can't. My brain doesn't work that way.
As long as we're talking about the writing, though, can I ask about the writing itself? Your books are they're all of them are compact. They have these. Like I said, I mentioned Winslow and Elroy as examples. You boil down things to their essence, and then you come up with these great description. The fist at the end of somebody else's arm. I mean, do you start like that? Is your writing compact as you go? Do you whittle it down? Where do you?
I'm what they call it, the term of art is a vomit drafter. I'm a vomit drafter. My rough drafts are unreadable to other people other than myself. In fact, they're more like book length outlines, and then I do a lot of drafts. I do a lot of drafts, and somewhere in the middle it will balloon up. It's kind of like bread rising, and then I will take it back down to a normal level. So everybody knows is I think 83,000 words. At one point it was 50,000 words rough draft, and then it was 100,000 words, 108,000 words at its biggest, and then I brought it back down to 80. So I just rewrite and rewrite and rewrite. That's the only way I know how to do it. I think my friend Jen had a question there.
I did. Jordan has a really good Substack where he talks about writing in really interesting ways, trying to make sense of it. You want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, I have a newsletter called Welcome to the Hammer Party where I write about writing, and my goal is to try and write about writing in a way that is equally applicable. Sorry, man, you guys saw my brain die there. To somebody making a kung fu film, as to somebody writing a literary novel, as to somebody writing a stage play about a family in poverty. Like, I'm really trying to talk about writing at the most abstract level, and I don't update it all the time because I have to have something to say to update it. But it's something I hope to turn into a book about creativity at some point. So it's called Welcome to the Hammer Party, and I update it so infrequently I haven't yet done the "Hey everybody, my novel everybody knows is out now" newsletter yet. So.
Speaking of everybody knows, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Leonard Cohen song.
Mm-hmm.
And was that your original title?
No, the original title of this book, the working title, was Hollywood Sickos. And
I think this is a better title.
well, you and my editor and my agent and my publisher all think that this is the better title. I love Hollywood Sickos as a title. If I was James Elroy, this book would be called Hollywood Sickos. But this is the more sellable title for sure. And it's also my title. I came up with it when it was Nat Sobel is my literary agent, who's like the lion of crime fiction literary agents, and he was Elroy's agent. He was Eddie Bunker's agent, Locke, and he's a great agent, and he was just like, no, so I came up, and it's based on a couple of things. It is obviously most directly based on the Leonard Cohen song "Everybody Knows," which that's thematically very much what this book is about, and it's also based on the fact that kind of gets talked about in the book. There's another phrase that gets used a lot, which is nobody talks, but everybody whispers, which is completely true about Hollywood. And, whenever one of these guys gets busted in the newspapers, it's never a surprise. It's never a surprise. And this isn't me telling a story about me being heroic or a whistleblower or anything like that, but years ago, I was with an executive at a big studio where I was working at the time. And I just said to him, hey, just so you know, I'm hearing these awful things about this producer on this show that I don't work on, but this other show. It's just getting around that this guy's horribly abusive to women. And the executive just goes, yeah. And then literally 5 years later, he finally gets outed in the press, and that studio and the guy he worked for all put out statements of we had no idea that this was going on. And I said, well, I knew it was going on, and I was like a staff writer on a different show at the same studio. So that's where that title comes from, is that everybody does know what goes on. And again, you get this feeling of, as long as you feel bad about it, I've been in situations where, a star is yelling at a guest star and being horrible to them, and I just have to stand there and smile, and I wish I was a person who had stepped in. But when your paycheck's on the line and everybody's terrified of this person because they're the one who makes the show go, so those are experiences I've had and felt bad about, and again, I'm trying to deal with that by writing this book.
Right.
Have you banked the movie money?
The movie money for this?
Yeah.
No, I have not sold the rights yet. I've had some meetings. I would like to sell it as a film, not a TV show, but no, it's early days. But there's I hope it's a feature. I bet.
You know,
I've
would
got
be another,
thoughts.
another great title would be Dead Game Boys.
Oh,
This is a good segue into talking about them.
okay.
Tell us who they are and how they
So
function.
the dead Game Boys in this novel are a fictionalized version of something that is unfortunately very, very real in Los Angeles, which is they are a gang made up of sheriff's deputies. So Los Angeles has two major police forces, both of which are the size of small countries' armies. We have the LAPD and then we have the LA Sheriff's Department. And the LA Sheriff's Department has what they call cliques and other people call gangs. And they are groups of men who get shared tattoos and commit crimes in order to, get into the group, and they commit crimes together, and they do things like the fictionalized version, the Dead Games Boys, they have a tattoo of a pit bull over their heart. And when they kill somebody, they are allowed to put red ink on the teeth, marking the fact that they have killed. Now, that is based on, I can't remember the name of the gang, but there's a sheriff's deputy gang where it's a skeleton holding a pistol is the tattoo that they have. And when you kill somebody, you're allowed to put smoke coming out of the pistol. So these are real things. And the Dead Game Boys are my fictionalized version of, again, a thing that is very real. And you meet them at an inking party where a guy is getting the red ink put on the teeth, and inking parties are real. No, I know it's really bad. It's really, and you try and tell people, you go, no, they're gangs. And the people go, you go, no, like gangs, like whatever you think the Crips are, that's
Right.
what these guys are. And the sheriff who fortunately just lost an election was rumored to be a bandito. So a thing that's in this book is you hear she's watching a news conference with the sheriff, and protesters are yelling, show us your ink, or show us your show us your sleeves. Which is a thing that would happen because he was rumored to have a bandito tattooed on his arm, and that's why he would never roll up his sleeves. So
Right.
yeah,
Now there's the sort of the Faustian bargain I mentioned earlier, and again I'll avoid going into serious spoiler land. But May, her boss, he kind of approaches her. She's like, you know what, you tell us.
well, her boss approaches her early in the novel and kind of says, "Look, I've come into something that I think could make us both very rich," which May automatically assumes means he's got a piece of information that he's covered up for somebody that is so juicy it will make great blackmail. And I think this is like
Early on in the book.
it's the inciting incident of the book. There's this thing that happens in LA. I don't know what the traffic is like here. I don't think there's any place where people go, traffic here is awesome, but traffic in LA is truly horrible. And there's a thing that happens in LA where you're stuck in traffic that is so bad that you have this horrible thought, which is, I hope somebody's dead, because at least then it'll be worth it that there's this bad of traffic. And May has that thought. She's trying to go meet her boss to find out what this event is, that what's going to make them rich. And she's stuck in that kind of traffic. So she parks her car and she runs down Sunset Boulevard to the meeting place. And it turns out there is somebody dead at the end of this traffic. And it's her boss who's been killed in what appears to be a carjacking gone wrong in front of the Beverly Hills Hotel. It's also based on a true story, by the way. There was a publicist named Ronnie Chasen who was killed in a alleged drive-by shooting about 10 years ago. It was a very similar situation. So that's the inciting incident of the novel is May watching her boss. Well, she doesn't see the murder, but her boss is murdered almost in front of her, and everybody's treating it like an accidental crime, and she knows that he died with this huge secret. So her suspicion, which I don't think this is a spoiler at all, is correct, is that there was something else going on besides just this. Yeah.
Right. And so she finds herself and her ex, whose
Chris.
Chris.
Chris Tamburo,
Tamburo, yeah.
Independently of each other, working the same and investigating the same story, right?
Yeah, so Chris is another part of what they call the Beast, and Chris and May used to date. Chris is a former sheriff's deputy who was very corrupt and got busted. He was in a unit that was very similar to the Scorpion unit that's in the news right now, one of these gun trace task forces that so often become completely corrupted. And he got busted for stealing drugs from the evidence locker and went down for it, and he became a fist. He starts working for these private security firms, and he roughs people up if they're getting out of line or trying to cause problems for rich people. And then he is given a chance to kind of act like a cop again, which is they want to know what happened to Dan Hennigan, May's boss, and so he's put in charge of investigating it for the Beast itself. And so May and Chris at the beginning of the book are both investigating the same crime, and they don't know it yet. And they are exes who met over the body of a dead star when they were covering something up, and dated. Yeah, it's romantic. And you know, this is something about their characters that I really like, because what they learn about each other is that because of what they do, they've become so dishonest that when they meet each other and they realize they can't lie to each other, it's at first very heady and romantic because they get close to seeing like the person they've left behind by doing all this evil, but they end up breaking up because it's too much, because total honesty when you're doing bad things is very hard to handle. And so this book turns out to be their second chance at trying to get to know each other and see if there's something beyond the lives that they lead that's worth saving, you know.
Robert,
So it's a romance.
It's a romance. It is a romance.
let me get you a water. I didn't.
You get you water.
You're probably parched.
Wow.
Now I can hear that the microphone carries because
Well, it's a romance. But in real life,
Thanks.
it's
You
more
have
like
to do
you
that.
said. It's banal. These people are banal.
oh, you mean the actual people
The
that
actual people, they're in a way they're kind of boring because they don't have this guilty feeling.
Yeah.
It's like Eichmann and that, it's just a job.
you know yeah, you're right, and I just choose to I'm most interested in the people who are conflicted, you know,
Yeah.
and I they're the
Well,
minority of people in this world. My favorite TV show of all time is a show called The Shield.
Oh, yeah.
And
Vic Mackey.
Vic Mackey is the guy who doesn't feel anything,
Yeah,
but my favorite character is Walton Goggins.
Shane.
Yeah, Shane. And that's one of the reasons I was so glad to work with him on LA Confidential, because to me, he's the life of that show
Great.
because he's the one who feels guilt. Yeah. And so that's what I'm interested in.
I
Yeah.
remember Elroy saying that in one of his very entertaining, those Turner, the movie classic film noirs, he and Eddie Muller will sometimes do the commentary.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a chance to
They're so funny.
to listen to those, anyway, he was talking about it was a Sterling Hayden film. I forget which one, but doesn't matter. But he was looking at it and he's like, "That's the real Bud White,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sterling Hayden. The brute poet of film noir."
I always thought Nick Nolte would have been a good Bud White too, like in
I
his
could see
prime.
that.
You know, hulking is hard to pull off. Somebody who actually has that big, massive presence who can also carry a role like that. You know, who isn't. Ooh, Mickey Rourke's a good
At,
one
at what
too.
era?
Yeah.
Yeah, like Angel Heart
That's a good
kind
one.
of period, maybe, or Pope of Greenwich Village.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
could see that.
I can see that.
I could see
I
that.
always thought it was Brian Dennehy.
Yeah.
Brian Dennehy's good. You know, there's what is it? It's not Internal Affairs. There's a movie with a title similar to Internal Affairs that Nick Nolte plays a very dirty cop in.
Yeah.
I think that is Internal Affairs.
Is it? What is it, Jen?
Oh,
Q&A. Jen's right. It's
Good
Q&A.
job.
And that's the one that I watched and said, oh, he could play Bud White. He's so evil. He's like one of the evilest cops in that movie. But, yeah.
Yeah.
He talks about, as I recall, almost everyone they work for is a sociopath.
I don't, that's a word like that's so loaded, but I think most people, like May's bosses, I think are people who think, well, this is the way the world is, right? So we might as well go along with
Someone's going to get paid. We might as well get
it. Someone's going to get paid, might as well be us. And then, you see it all the time in Hollywood, not just with evil, but just with like unsatisfying jobs and things, as people go out and they buy really expensive houses and they put their kids in outrageously expensive private schools. And now what are you going to do? You're going to take a moral stand? You can't afford to. And I think that happens a lot. And again, I think there's a lot of people who think as long as I give to the right charities and I do, I make the right mouth noises about how I'm supposed to feel about it, then what I actually do doesn't matter that much. And that's a lot of the moral of the book, is that I don't believe that, even though sometimes I don't always live what I would like to live. I don't believe feeling bad about something is good enough, and that, if we're going to change the world, you actually have to.
Well, and don't you think it's by degrees?
Yes.
They lose their humanity by little slice,
Well, that's funny because, right, part of the story is the redemption, but the redemption is you got to pull the trap door and then you fall into the next trap, and then you take that trap door, and pretty soon people are in serious pain in this book.
Yeah, but it's it's also that's the exciting part, right? It's just to keep it going and keep the twists coming in ways that don't feel like orchestra string like twists, but just like, oh, it just got worse. That's always a great way of keeping the story moving.
And
you
it
know?
really does just get worse.
Yeah.
What's I mean, we were talking beforehand, and everyone I talked to tonight is in love with this book. What's the reception been?
I mean, I've been so fortunate with the reception. I've gotten, like you said, I got a lot of really great people to blurb this book, and I've gotten some good reviews. And I guess you asked, it feels like bragging to say, but I was on Fresh Air last week, not me personally, but the book got reviewed on Fresh Air. And Maureen Corrigan gave me my favorite review that I've gotten, because she said it's not just a crime novel, it's just a good book. Which so often with what we do and what we all like, we get put in this corner of like genre, and I feel like I want to punch with everybody. I want an open class, like, and so that's to me the thing that I think has been most gratifying is a lot of people I respect a lot have responded really, really well to this one.
So this is you beating the crap out of John Updike.
Yeah, I could take John Updike. I could not take James Elroy, but I could take John Updike. Yeah, but no, it's been great. So I mean, it's really fun.
Well, I remember, I don't want to out your editor, Josh Kendall. Hey, Josh, fantastic editor. And
Oh, yeah.
I remember, him saying this is the best book I've ever worked on.
Oh, wow.
Which is, sorry to say that, Josh. It's going to disappoint some of your other authors, but hey. Anyway, he's a hell of an editor.
He's great. I've been really so lucky to be at Mulholland, which is a great imprint, and they've been spectacular to me, and really made me feel special, and what we do is really hard, and I don't think that some writers try and really ring this as like, oh, we're so special. It's what we do is interesting, and it's mentally difficult because of how language works, and sometimes that messes with your psychic facilities a little bit. It's not being a roofer, right? Like there are hard, dangerous jobs in this world, and I don't want to ever act like I have one of them, but they understand that you pour a lot of yourself into books, and I think that's the part that's difficult, is you really do pour a lot of yourself into it, and Mulholland's been great about making me feel like they understand that and respect it, and so I'm very happy to be there.
And they take so many chances, I mean, like from Ben Winter to Richard Lang to their roster is really interesting. And
oh yeah, Gabino, Iglesias, and
that's right.
they have a very wide range. No, it's I love being there. I'm really happy, and I'm just right now, for me, it's just the terror of needing to do it again, and trying to.
On Amazon and in your book cover, you tell very little about yourself. How come?
Oh, you mean like on the bio? I never know what to say in those things. It's just like, I grew up in Missouri. I live in Los Angeles. What do you want? One of my heroes is David Lynch, and David Lynch's entire biography for his entire career has been David Lynch is an Eagle Scout from Missoula, Montana. And,
Did you know that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
did you happen to see that? I'm digressing. That Harry Dean Stanton documentary.
I haven't seen it. I love
Has
Harry
anybody
Dean
seen
Stanton.
that? All right, I'm getting too obscure. But there's some cool scenes with Stanton and David Lynch talking back and forth about
His appearance in that last final season of Twin Peaks is really special.
Yeah.
And that he got to do that. So many people who are in that died immediately afterwards. It was like the last time you could have done that season of Twin Peaks, and but him especially, like that they got him to sing and be in it was really special.
I wanted to ask, was Mulholland happy with what you gave them, or did they demand certain things, changes?
I mean, like he said, Josh is a really good editor, and Josh had notes, which he should. I'm glad he had notes. But overall, this is pretty much the book in the main that I turned in the sense that, like, and I said this to Josh, like, I hope you don't have too big of problems with it, because it's clockwork, and there's a lot of stuff that if you pulled it out, the clock would fall apart.
Bob and I were talking about, and I really have to say I admire, without giving anything away, how propulsive the book is, how the narrative is so tightly structured, and it just rolls like a roller coaster. I read it in one sitting, straight through.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
I couldn't give you enough praise at how beautifully this thing is constructed,
Oh, thank you.
right? I mean,
It's really well constructed.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Oh, thank you.
it really was.
It's
Well-
a piece of crap.
Thank you. I didn't need that. I needed that. No, look, first of all, to go back to Josh for a second, because I don't want to act like he, like he absolutely, he gave me some very good, thoughtful notes. And especially near the end of the book, he has one suggestion that I cannot say out loud because it would be a big spoiler that he gave to me that I think really helped change the end of the book. So he did a great job. But as far as, my craft abilities when it comes to plotting, I worked on The Mentalist for 6 years. And that was, I say all the time, it was like I got paid to go to grad school. And, to learn how to do not just a case of the week mystery, which The Mentalist was, but it was also a case of the week mystery where you were never allowed to end the show by the detective pointing at the guy and said, he did it. Which I watch other shows like that and I go, that's so easy because we had to develop a mystery. And then at the same time, we had to come up with a magic trick that Patrick Jane would do to reveal who the killer was. And so it's really one of the most intricate stories that you could ever break, and I helped break 130 of them. I wrote 14 of them, and so I think that's where I learned that kind of like real plotting, and I think I'm so grateful for that training because it's a training that even most TV writers today don't get that. And if I was like the dictator of television, I would make every TV writer do at least one season on a case of the week mystery show because you learn construction the way that I think they should make poets learn how to write rhyming sonnets just for a little while. And then if you want to go off and go free verse, but you should learn, the way Picasso learned how to do regular drawing and then became Picasso. And so The Mentalist was that for me. The Mentalist absolutely taught me how to do storytelling in that kind of level. And so.
Do you know Sarah Gran?
I do.
Isn't she something else?
Sarah Gran is a truly great writer. I have not read her new book yet, but Dope for me is a great
You should
book.
read her new book.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
you have it here?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
I
yeah,
need to buy
she's-
books when
yeah.
I leave here.
What about Dwayne Swarzynski?
I know Dwayne. I actually know Dwayne.
Great guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He's a great guy. I run into him a lot. There's a lot of movie theaters in Los Angeles where they play old
Yeah,
movies.
He's there all.
He's there all the time, and so usually that's where I run into Dwayne is in those. I saw him, a couple of weeks ago at a Giallo, which are like Italian horror movies from
yeah.
the '70s, and he was there. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, L.A. Look, L.A. to me is like the epicenter of crime and noir. I specifically noir. I think a lot of people want to say like there's some place in the Midwest that's the real America. To me, Los Angeles is the real America because it's about traffic and money and fame and pollution and power
Sex.
and sex. And it's just America turned up to 12, and that's why I think, there are other places that are great, great sources of noir, New York City and things like that. But the truly great ones, I don't think anybody can argue that LA is
Well, you
it's,
missed one of the crimes, which is food, apparently, because
Oh.
as you go off on some of these,
Yeah.
the oat milk, the whatever, the cookies, the little Echo Park eatery.
Yeah, all of the restaurants, I love food, and I love the food of Los Angeles. My younger brother used to live in LA with me. He doesn't anymore. He moved back to Missouri. But we kind of met Los Angeles by going all around LA and like going to taco places and then driving to Koreatown and then, driving to Thai Town. And just that's a great way to meet Los Angeles because it's just this incredible food place. But I also because I work in Hollywood, I also eat at the shishi places with the ancient grains and the bison and the, zug dusted rock cod and things like that.
No Musso and Frank.
No, Musso and Frank,
It's the old Hollywood.
yeah, and that maybe next time, right? But like, no, but for me, LA food is Koreatown and Thai Town, and so all of the places. I gave Chris an apartment that looks down on what I think is the best food block in America.
Koreatown.
In Koreatown, it's at 6th and Alexandria, and so all the restaurants, even if I don't name them, they're all based on real places. And so, like again, like if I've mentioned a celebrity at one of them, it's because I've seen a celebrity. I went down to Koreatown to tape something for my publisher, and my friend Rob Belushi was taping me, and literally behind him, I saw Anna Taylor-Joy get out of a black SUV and go into a mall. And I was like, oh, great, I have something for the next book. I've emptied all my sightings into this one. So now I have a new one that I can go to. And yeah.
So Jordan, from your online community, just lots of love and support, which is really awesome. We have one gentleman who always asks who's publishing your book, but also more importantly, how did you find your publisher? How did Mulholland find you?
You know, Josh and I have been talking for a while now, you know, and you know, I met Josh at BoucherCon, which BoucherCon is the big mystery writer convention. I think I met him for the first time in Dallas, which was maybe 2 years before the pandemic. I might have met him in New Orleans. I don't remember, but you know, I think Mulholland is so obviously the place I belong right now with who's publishing crime fiction, who's publishing this kind of crime fiction. That, you know, when we've submitted this book to him, I think it felt very much I'm going to butcher this, but a fait accompli. Is that right? I don't know.
No, that would be giving up.
Oh, okay. See, I told you I was gonna mess it up. It felt like it was just like, oh yeah, no, Josh is gonna publish this book.
Kismet.
Kismet. It was meant to be. It was meant to be. And, but yeah, he I think it was Steph Chaw who introduced us, I think, at the Dallas BoucherCon, if I'm remembering it correctly. Steph and I got to be really good friends at that BoucherCon. We went to the JFK Assassination Museum, which, if you've never been, is because it's not a JFK museum, you know, it's a JFK Assassination Museum, and you get in there and you realize very quickly that I've never been to a museum that's just about a murder before, and it's very morbid in a weird way, but it's also incredibly fascinating.
Cool. Anybody have any questions?
I do. And full disclosure, I was tweeting as you started, so if you answered this, my apologies. Did you move from Missouri to LA? If so, what was your plan and what was reality?
No, I took a long trip from Missouri to LA. I lived in New York for a few years before that, and then I didn't like living in New York very much. And I'd been a music journalist for a few years, and then I was a film critic in New York. And I had other jobs too because I didn't pay, but like that was what I was doing. And I was writing short stories. And I got really tired in New York, and I told the woman I was with at the time, like, I'm leaving New York City. You can come with me, but the part where I leave isn't negotiable. And she was in theater, and she said, well, there are 3 places I can make a living, and it's New York, where we are, Chicago, which, if anybody's from Chicago, no offense, but like I do not like that place, and LA. And I'm like, great, we're moving to LA. And so I
Get
took
the stink eyes from Steve here.
sorry, it's the winters. It's the winters. I can't do them.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, right. Me too. That's why I'm in LA. And so I took a short story that I had written, and I turned it into what's called a spec script, which is where you write an episode of an existing TV show to prove that you can write television. And I wrote a Shield spec based on one of my short stories, and I entered in what's called the Warner Brothers Writers Workshop, which is a training program that Warner Brothers did operate until last year. They just shut it down, unfortunately, but they trained you to be a TV writer, and they gave you interviews with Warner Brothers television shows. And my second interview that I ever had was with Bruno Heller, who was the creator of The Mentalist, and he hired me and changed my life. I worked for him for 6 years on The Mentalist, and then 2 years on Gotham, which is where I met my partner Megan. And so that was a real life-changing job interview, you know. But yeah, that's how I got there. It was a long trip from Missouri to LA, but yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, one more, because I feel like I need a palate cleanser, and I'm terrified to start reading the book because you guys keep saying how dark it is. So you said you love LA. Tell me what you love about LA so I can have happy thoughts.
Oh, well, it's just, you know, first of all, the weather is really spectacular. And I don't miss winter at all. I miss rain, but I don't miss winter.
Good enough, though? Wow.
Well, that was what's these storms. We just learned our basement floods when it rains that hard. So that was the bad part. But no, look, honestly, not to go back to it, but the food is not the only thing I love about it, but it's like kind of the key to what I love about it, which is we have the largest group. I live right next to Glendale, which is a city. It's a standalone city, but I live on the LA Glendale border. Glendale has the largest group of Armenian people in the world outside of Armenia.
Is that Eagle Rock?
I live in Eagle Rock. Yeah, Eagle Rock is right next to Glendale. Yeah. We have our Thai town has the largest group of Thai people outside of Thailand in the world. Our Koreatown has the largest group of Koreans anywhere outside of Korea. One time New York Magazine put out an article saying, "Oh, New York City Mexican food is better than LA Mexican food." And LA Magazine didn't put out a list of the 100 best tacos in LA. They put out a list of the 100 best types of tacos in LA. And it's this incredibly diverse place with great weather and what's it?
The Persians.
Persians. Oh, yeah, that's
Persian food.
well on my side of town because the Persian district is west, but we get that kind of food through the Armenians, and so that and just I learned very quickly that I'm a sucker for like movie history and like the seeing famous people and seeing famous stuff that you've seen in movies, and it's a place where people come because they're trying to make their dreams come true. And look, we all know that ends badly sometimes, but it's still there's something really special about it. It can end well. And it's so look, I mean, there are terrible things about it. The pollution is terrible. The way we treat homeless people is terrible. The real estate prices are truly, I mean, it's rough.
And the traffic.
And the traffic is bad, but like, no, it's a great, I mean, the old saw people say about like New York is a great place to visit, but you wouldn't want to live there. I feel like LA is actually the opposite. People visit LA and they haven't learned the tricks about the traffic and they get stuck in traffic, or they go to Hollywood, which hasn't really been about movies for years and years. And it's just tourist traps and bad restaurants. Like, this place sucks. But if you live there and you learn it and you learn that, I live on the east side of LA. I have friends who live on the west side who I haven't seen in months and months because it's literally a different city. It takes 2 hours to get there. So you don't go there all the time. So I don't see the ocean a lot. The ocean is not a part of my Los Angeles. But it's one of the great cities of the world. I don't know. That's pretty cool. That's my ad, Los Angeles.
It's funny. My mom grew up in Eagle Rock.
Oh, really?
Her dad was an LAPD cop back in the 40s and 50s.
Oh, wow.
In Elroy era.
Mm-hmm.
When she was a little girl, not to get up on my own thing, but when she was a little girl, her father was in charge of doing security for a lot of these movie premieres. And so she, as a little girl, going to some of these, back in the late 40s. Wow. Although he did come to somewhat of an Elroy-esque end.
Do tell.
Yeah, I just kind of garden variety alcoholic tailspin when she was about 14 or 15. So it was pretty good. But Michael Connelly, I shouldn't probably be revealing some of this stuff, but we always had questions about how, there were questions about his death,
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Connelly actually was the one who helped my parents and myself find this treasure trove of documents.
Really?
From within LAPD.
Oh,
and there was no smoking gun, nothing like that, but it answered a lot of questions. It's pretty cool.
Well, you're right. That's very Elroy. That's very My Dark
Yeah,
Places.
absolutely.
Right there,
Yeah. Anybody else have questions?
Really interesting.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, maybe we'll wrap it up and have you sign some books for us.
Happy
And
to.
Thanks everybody for coming down tonight.
Yeah,
And
thanks for
everybody
coming.
online too. You want to just kind of stay here?
Sure. Whatever
Yeah.
works.
If you have,
It's good to see you.
Yeah.
You too, bud.
Take care, bud. Keep that newspaper coming out.
Shit, man. Let's give it a try.
See you. Nice to meet you, Robert.
do you have a pen? You want me to
Yeah, I should get your books
get
on.
one? Okay.